Hello Pokemon trainers, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Battle Stadium singles video here on iStarly TV. Today I'm continuing my Battle Stadium singles spotlight series where I go over one of the Pokemon that is usable in Battle Stadium singles and I kind of talk about all of the different ways that you can use it, basically a how to use this Pokemon guide. I cover Tera types, items, movesets, EVs, everything like that. So pretty comprehensive, though at the end of the day, I do always stress that you're welcome to be creative. And in fact, I encourage that. You can use one of these sets and it'll probably work well for you. But if you like a Pokemon, you're welcome to experiment with it and see what works. Today, we're talking about Iron Moth, which is actually one of the best Pokemon in the metagame right now. It is currently the 7th most used Pokemon in the entire format. So obviously it's doing something right. If you look at its stats, you will notice that it's got a lot going for it. So let's talk about it. First of all, what Iron Moth has going for it. It is a fire and poison type, which is a pretty unique typing. Obviously it's super weak to ground, which is a decently common type. However, beyond that, it actually has a few very important resistances. It 4 times resists Fairy as well as Grass. Fairy is a very common type, especially with the new Flutter Mane being added to the format. It also resists moves like Fire, Ice, and a few other pretty common types. So despite its pretty common weaknesses, it also has a few very common resistances, which helps it out a lot. It hits really, really hard with a 140 base special attack stat, as well as access to Volcarona's signature move, given that it's kind of based off of Volcarona in Fiery Dance. Fiery Dance is 80 base power, hits pretty hard, and it has, I believe, a 50% chance to boost your special attack stat. So this move can basically let you sweep teams completely, and you're already doing a lot of damage because of that high special attack stat. Iron Moth's speed is also pretty good at base 110, which allows it to outspeed a lot of pretty common threats in the meta, such as things like Garchomp and other Pokemon like that, I guess. But it's also still slower than a lot of other common threats, such as Flutter Mane and other stuff like that. So gotta keep that in mind. As far as moves as well, Iron Moth has a really good coverage. It has all it really needs to cover most everything in the meta. These 4 moves that you see on this first set right here are actually probably the 4 moves that you'll see most often on Iron Moth. It's got Fiery Dance and Sludge Wave, both of which are strong moves that are also stab, so they hit really hard. Then you've got Dazzling Gleam to hit, dragon types, fighting types, etc. And then finally you have Energy Ball, which does round out the coverage really well, lets you hit ground types, lets you hit water types, etc. like that. So these 4 moves are really where you want to be, although I will be talking about other moves that Iron Moth has access to that can replace some of these moves, because as you'll find, the funny thing is Iron Moth actually completely walls itself. So if you're running these 4 moves, which are the 4 most used moves on Iron Moth, opposing Iron Moths are gonna eat your moves, eat your hits all day. They're not gonna take much damage from any of these, and vice versa if they are only running those moves. It's gonna be funny, like if you both have Iron Moth out, you're just not gonna be doing that much damage to each other unless one of you has a different like Tera type or something like that, or another move that we'll talk about. So the first set is, I'm not sure if this is the most standard set, but I think it's probably one of the best sets to run for Iron Moth, in my opinion. So let's talk about the EVs because they do look a little weird. You'll notice first of all that I have 0 investment in special attack. That's because of the booster energy. I'm running booster energy here with the goal of getting my speed boosted. The only way to do that is because Iron Moth's special attack is so high, it'll almost always be higher than your speed stat if you have any investment in it. So I've just not invested any EVs in special attack and then gone ahead and invested just enough speed EVs so that my speed stat is my highest stat, so it will always get the boost with booster energy. Plus, with 161 base speed, you even outspeed a lot of common Pokemon, but also, once you have that booster energy boost, you are going to be faster than just about everything unboosted in the metagame. So that's great, obviously. From there, since we're not going to want to invest anything in special attack, we're just free to invest all of that into HP, because obviously investing it in HP means we're going to take both special and physical hits a little bit better. And because Iron Moth's defense is so low, we're just gonna run the rest of that in special defense because it already has a good special defense stat. And so giving it even more to work with really helps, especially against those common special attackers such as Fluttermane, even Pokemon like Iron Bundle, and of course opposing Iron Moths. So this lets you just really take hits from them all day. It also lets you take on even Goldango really well. So just about any special attacker you're mostly not going to be afraid of. Iron Bundle does have super effective moves, which is scary, but you know, if you can kind of predict correctly, or if you have like a decent Tera type, you can take it on still. And then of course, Fiery Dance lets you boost your special attack stat. So you can basically kind of get like pseudo quiver dances going where you send into Iron Moth, you get that speed boost, and then you go for Fiery Dance, and if you boost your special attack, you're just great. You're in a great position. You're bulky, you're fast, and you're gonna hit really hard. Finally, with this set, you know, you might think maybe I could just dump those 124 EVs into defense just to make it take physical hits a little bit better. Iron Moth is just so bad at taking physical hits that I just don't know if that's really worth it. I guess what you could also do is take out the 252 in HP and put all of those in defense, which is kind of weird, but you know, that's also a possibility if you want to try that. You can try different things, but personally, I just really like this set a lot because it just makes you perfect against other special attackers, and it makes you a threat in your own right. Now, I'll just kind of go ahead and talk about this right now because this can apply to all of the other sets. Let's talk about that fourth move. So basically, I think you always want Fiery Dance and Sludge Wave. From there, Dazzling Gleam and Energy Ball again are great coverage, but as I did say, you are completely walled by opposing Iron Moths as well as Pokemon like Skeledirge. So there are Pokemon that can resist every single one of these moves. If that's the case, it's possible you want to run something like Discharge. Discharge is another move. I think it's the 5th most used move on Iron Moth. And it's a pretty solid move that also hits decently hard, and it has the chance of paralyzing the opponent. The downside to that is you have to kind of sacrifice Sludge Wave, Dazzling Gleam, or Energy Ball, because I think you always want Fiery Dance on every single Iron Moth set. So you have to make that sacrifice of, do I run Discharge or do I run Energy Ball? Do I run Discharge or do I run Dazzling Gleam, etc. So Discharge is a great move. I really like it. And in fact, I've started using it on my Iron Moth sets because of that, because it lets me hit some of those Pokemon that I won't typically be able to hit. But again, you have to make that sacrifice. Finally, there's also Hurricane, but of course the inaccuracy of Hurricane makes it a little less appealing. All right, this next set I'm going to talk about briefly because it's another booster energy set that boosts speed. I've seen a lot of people run this one as well, and of course this is a good option as well. So if you run a Timid Nature with max speed, that means you can invest a little bit of your EVs into special attack. Of course, you still want to run not max special attack because you want to make sure your speed is getting boosted, but this lets you hit a little bit harder and still have some bulk with some HP investment. So this is another option for Iron Moth if again you want to just be able to hit as hard as possible. Plus with max speed and a Timid Nature, you'll outspeed other Iron Moths that are running similar sets, or not outspeed, but you'll speed tie with them, so you might outspeed them. Next, we have another booster energy set, and this is the special attack boosting set. So this lets us go, again, max speed, max special attack. Those 4 remaining EVs, you can put them in whatever you want. I would probably just put them in special defense, but this lets you get the special attack boost with the booster energy. Again, do remember that you're not getting plus 50% special attack, you're getting plus 30%. So it's not like truly choice specs, but it's still letting you hit really hard. It's basically like a free life orb without taking the recoil damage. And again, I like running a Timid Nature here because it'll let us speed tie with opposing Iron Moths, let us outspeed important Pokemon like Garchomp, etc. You can also run Modest if you'd like to hit extra hard, but personally I think I would recommend Timid. And real quick, one thing that I actually haven't mentioned yet, but again, this will apply to all of these sets I'm talking about, the Tera type for Iron Moth. You'll notice, I forgot to mention this, but you'll notice that I have Tera Grass on almost all of these. And that's because that's the best Tera type for Iron Moth. Currently, Grass is the most used Tera type for Iron Moth, notably because it's a good defensive and offensive Tera type. Of course, Iron Moth is most weak to ground and water type moves, so turning into a grass type lets you resist those. Also, by being a grass type, it lets you deal extra damage with your energy ball. So grass is the most common Tera type. The second most common is fire, which lets you hit harder with your fire type moves. I would recommend grass for almost every Iron Moth set because again, it's a good offensive and defensive Tera type. I would only recommend fire personally if you're trying to go a lot more offensive, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Other good Tera types are water. Water is another great one because it also lets you round out some of those some of those weaknesses. And you can also run Tera Blast if you run Tera Water, which will let you hit opposing Iron Moths and even Skeledirge super effectively. So that's another pretty solid option. And that brings us to our next set. Now this is a set that I haven't really tried myself yet, but I would like to try it out. It actually seems really strong. And this is Tera Fire Choice Specs Iron Moth. So in general, Choice Specs is a really good item on Iron Moth because it already has a really high special attack set and good speed. So you get to hit even harder with Choice Specs. I think it's a great option. And if you want to try Tera Fire with Overheat, you can just absolutely obliterate probably just about everything that does not resist it, and even some things that do resist it. So you can just kind of do a ton of burst damage out of nowhere that the opponent just doesn't see coming. You terastallize into Tera Fire, you click Overheat, and then again, you just erase the opponent without them really expecting that. So that's a good one because Iron Moth is such a threatening Pokemon that it forces a lot of switches. So you might be able to kind of like maybe switch in on, Baxcalibur, and they're scared of the Dazzling Gleam or something, so they switch into some random Pokemon and then you just destroy them with Overheat. I don't know, it just seems like a fun set to try out, and I definitely want to try it at some point. And next we have the Assault Vest set. Assault Vest is another fantastic item for Iron Moth because once again, it's already offensively built. Great speed, great special attack, and it already has a really high special defense with a decent HP stat. So if you want to run Assault Vest, you could invest more in HP if you'd like. Feel free to experiment with some calcs. I'll put a link to the damage calculator in the description in case you want to plug some numbers in and kind of see what hits you can live. This is a great set. This lets you pretty much take special hits from just about anything, because again, you already have that really naturally high special defense. But I personally just think that Iron Moth already has such great special defense that you don't really need to worry that much about it, in my opinion. But again, this is another really solid option. I feel like if you're going Assault Vest as well, this also opens up a lot of doors for different Tera types for you, like Tera Water, for example. Bulky water types are great. So being a water type that can just take special hits all day is a pretty good position to be in, I would say. Also, there is Tera Fairy, which is always just a great Tera type in general, or even Tera Normal, which is a great Tera type that doesn't have any weaknesses except fighting. And fighting is not super common. So if you go Tera Normal, for example, you're going to be able to take hits from a lot of things. You'll be like a mini Blissey that can hit hard as well. So that's another great option as well that I want to try. And finally, let's talk about Choice Scarf, which is another solid option for Iron Moth. Choice Scarf, I think, is a little bit inferior to Booster Energy. In most cases, Booster Energy is better because it gives you basically a Choice Scarf boost, but it lets you switch your moves. The thing about Booster Energy, though, is you go into battle, you eat that Booster Energy, it gives you the speed boost, but if you switch out, you lose it. You don't have the speed boost anymore. Of course, with Choice Scarf, you always have the speed boost. So that's the one benefit that Choice Scarf has over Booster Energy. So if you're kind of worried about that, this could be a good option for you as well. The Tera type, of course, should be grass, or again, it could be anything depending on what your team is looking like, but I always prefer grass, not ghost. As far as EVs, this EV spread will let you speed tie with other Iron Moths who have gotten a Booster Energy boost, because again, that is the most common item on Iron Moth right now. You could also go Modest to hit a lot harder and still outspeed most everything in the metagame that doesn't have a boost itself. But let's talk about a set that I personally have been loving. This has been my favorite. So this has been the EV spread that I've been running a lot in my videos, so I'll put a link to a few of my Iron Moth videos in the description so you can kind of see Iron Moth in action. This is a Pokemon that's been doing really well for me on the Battle Stadium singles ladder. I put it on a lot of teams, and sometimes it single-handedly just kind of destroys teams. It's so good. Not this set in general, but Iron Moth in general, although this set has been really good for me as well. So we've got max special attack, of course, with a modest nature to hit as hard as possible. Of course, with Fiery Dance, we can boost our special attack, which has been really clutch as well. I have 100 speed EVs, which lets me, with the Choice Scarf, outspeed Dragapult, which again, Dragapult is the fastest Pokemon in the metagame. So if I'm outspeeding Dragapult, that means I outspeed everything else that does not have a booster energy or Choice Scarf boost itself. So this is a really reliable set for me. And again, I am running the Tera Grass with Fiery Dance, Sludge Wave, Gleam, and Energy Ball. In some videos, I have switched out the Sludge Wave for Discharge, again, as I talked about. But again, there's a lot of room to play around with Iron Moth. Despite the fact that it's usually locked into a special attacker role, it still has a lot of versatility with its moves, with its Tera types, and with its EV spreads that can let you get the edge on just about any Pokemon in the meta. So finally, let's talk about a few other options here. I know I have the Choice Scarf still equipped, but I'm just gonna run through just a few other move options for Iron Moth. So it gets Flash Cannon, which is really cool. The thing about Flash Cannon though is it doesn't really offer too much new coverage that the other moves already give you. So, you know, if you want to hit Ice type super effectively with Flash Cannon, well, you have other moves that can hit those. If you want to hit Fairy type super effectively, well, you have Stabbed Sludge Wave. So I guess one benefit of Flash Cannon over Sludge Wave is it hits Flutter Mane super effectively, whereas Sludge Wave only hits Flutter Mane neutrally because Ghost resists poison. So that's an option, sure, if you're really worried about those Pokemon. I think it's pretty team dependent though, but like I said, these 4 moves that I have on my Iron Moth here, these are the 4 most used moves on Iron Moth. So obviously they're working. Also, Iron Moth has access to screens. It has Light Screen and Reflect. If you want a Pokemon on your team who can set that up, that's a decent option as well because Iron Moth is fast and it's already pretty bulky. Actually, I'm looking through this. It looks like we might not get Reflect. It looks like we might only have Light Screen, which is really interesting. I've never really seen that before. But anyways, it gives you that option to, you know, you already have a fast Pokemon that's really good at taking special hits. You can set up Light Screen to take special hits even better, but also kind of support your team with that. There's also Morning Sun, which gives you some recovery if you want to run another kind of bulkier set, or if you just want to run, you know, the ability to heal yourself a little bit. That can be a good option. Psychic is another move if you want to hit other Iron Moths super effectively. I think this is a solid option, again, for taking on other Iron Moths, but it doesn't, beyond that, it doesn't really offer too much new coverage that, once again, Iron Moth already has. So it's another move that, you know, it has very niche uses, but it still has some use if you want to do that. We've also got Toxic Spikes if you want to set up some hazards here. Of course, with Toxic Spikes and with all of these supporting moves, really, it means you're taking up the slot of one of these other moves that are already doing really well for you. So you have to have a really good reason for using moves like this. But if your team really calls for some hazards that you'll really benefit from, and you feel like maybe your team is already good at dealing with ground types or water types, maybe you don't need Energy Ball, for example, then yes, this can be a solid option. U-turn can be a good move as well, just because Iron Moth is a Pokemon that can switch in really well against certain Pokemon and force switches against certain Pokemon. So you can like send in your Iron Moth against something and then expect them to switch out so you can U-turn, get a little bit of damage on whatever comes in, and give yourself the ability to switch into something that benefits you there. That's a good option, but once again, as I keep saying, Iron Moth's 4 moves are already just so good at doing what they do that you kind of don't really need U-turn, but it definitely has its uses. And 2 more moves I want to talk about here. We've got Acid Spray, which is stabbed, so that's good, and it lowers their special defense by 2. So if you want your Iron Moth to play a little bit more of a support role while still being able to do a lot of damage to certain things, this can be a good option. So for example, if you send in your Iron Moth against something, you predict them to switch out, you go for Acid Spray, and then basically whatever they went into now has -2 special defense, which means they're going to be taking a lot more damage from whatever move you're about to go for. So that can put you in a really good position, that can give you some really good momentum. But you know, same disclaimer as always, right? You have to have a really good reason for using it, but if you do, that's great. Finally, we'll talk about Electric Terrain. So the funny thing is, you know, all of these Violet exclusive Paradox Pokemon have Quark Drive, which once again gets boosted or boosts their stats in Electric Terrain or if they're holding booster energy. So Iron Moth is fast and it's bulky. It has the option to set up Electric Terrain for its team and for itself, really. So you could kind of build an Iron Moth set that can take advantage of Electric Terrain. It also gives you the option to hold a different item. So another fun set would be like holding maybe a Terrain Extender item, setting up Electric Terrain. You'd also want to put Discharge on it, just, you know, to continue to take advantage of that, and then maybe boost your speed, and then you're kind of like a threat And then if you happen to faint or switch out or something, maybe you'll have another Paradox Pokemon that can benefit from electric terrain as well. So I think that's another fun one to try out. Of course, once again, the downside is that it requires you to have electric terrain on your moveset, and sometimes there's not a great window to click that move when you'd rather just be dealing damage. So another good option. Sounds like a lot of fun. Honestly, I kind of want to try that now on one of my teams, so maybe in the future I'll have a electric terrain Iron Moth. But anyways, that is Iron Moth in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Battle Stadium Singles Series 2. I know that was a lot to take in, but again, Iron Moth's such a fantastic Pokemon. There's so many different ways to use it really well, and I think all of these allow you to get the edge on opposing Pokemon. So great Pokemon here. I highly encourage you to use it if you haven't already. Again, at the end of this video, I'm going to post a couple videos on the end screen that let you see Iron Moth in action, some of the battles that I've had with it, and it's just been such a great Pokemon. And you know, I thought Fluttermane and Roaring Moon would be my two favorite Paradox Pokemon because they just looked so strong and so powerful before the season started. Iron Moth's slowly creeping up in there. It's a really great Pokemon. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, and please subscribe for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.